We are talking about books, in specific books on cinema, how writing and publishing on cinema is connected with cinema itself.
Yes, thank you, Igor. So first of all, to say that in regards to, especially to the books, to the book we have co-published, Žilnik and kuda, what is important to say is that Žilnik's oeuvre and the interest in his films and activities is very much, the talking and thinking with Želimir is made easy by the sheer fact that quite many of his things are well documented. Not just on Želimir's website, želimiržilnik.net, which is a prime example of how you should, let's say, document your own portfolio as an artist or intellectual, but also due to many other activities, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, that in a way had made it possible that quite much of things related to Želimir's career is available not just on paper but also online. And first of all, I would say that this makes it not just easy, now to get the information, but also to think of how you engage in another way with an important artist. This I say because during our podcasts with Dan Kršić and Petra Belc, there was always the question of how you document and also promote an oeuvre of authors who come from countries, if not already deemed marginal, but at least, in the geography of cultural production are in a way marginalized. And then you talk also about, within those cultures, you talk about artists who have been on the margins or on the fringes. You also talk about artists whose oeuvres are maybe not even saved, in the physical terms. So, this makes Želimir an interesting case, because again, with all that said, with much of his oeuvre available, easily or readily available, and also then with the interest of other researchers, curators, publishers in his oeuvre, this makes it in a way, what makes it interesting is then that you actually always can engage with him on a second level. You can, in a way, do kind of, not just Žilnik, something on Žilnik, but then you can actually make some kind of, ironically, in a sense, meta-Žilnik. You actually can, through Želimir as a metaphor and as a name, you can engage with questions of film, cultural production on a more abstract level, in a way, and not just in a way being so-called native informants who, in a way, introduce important artists to a broader international level. So this will be one thing. The second thing, and this is then connected to what we at Multimedia Institute, so MAMA in Zagreb, have been dealing for the, yes, I would say for the last 10 years in quite an intense way, was of how, in a way, and to borrow a phrase of our friend and collaborator Pavel Levy, the film scholar, so there was a way of how to make cinema by other means. And for us, it meant foremost of how to make books that are not just about cinema, but are legitimate extension of what cinema or what we think films are. So in a way, the books we have here on a table in front of us, almost all of them have been in this or that way, dealing with the way of how to extend the screen, the on-screen cinema off-screen, in a format and a medium that is, let's say, that has been much longer around. And since then, also, maybe not just that that books are longer around than cinema, but also that quite many, I mean, since with a book, you deal with a rather conservative format. You have a rectangular, you have something on paper. So how, in a way, also deconstruct the format of a book?
I like this idea of Meta Žilnik, and basically he is generation of quite well-known alternative thinkers about art in general, but also on film. And obviously I'm talking about first and foremost Branko Vučićević, but also our own Tomislav Gotovac and others who try to expand this idea of film as a medium. I will mention just paper movies, Branko's, and sudden interest in past, let's say, a decade or so, of Tom Gotovac's work. We also, it's not on the table, but we also have a book by Slobodan Šijan about passion of Tom Gotovac, not about Tom Gotovac itself and his work, but passion of and his ideas of expansion of movie.
Yes. Yeah, I would say, I mean, what you have just said, I mean, there was since, I mean, also us being around now for more than 2 decades, and this goes the same with our friends from Novi Sad, dealing with the past, with one owns inheritance in a way from local, national cultures or cities, and he, in a way, trying to sometimes even to forge alliances or lines of whatever we call it, historical lines or lines of influence, that taking in a way the task of introducing important figures from your that in a way made our own activities possible to some broader international public in English, of course. This is something that we have been engaged with now for more than a decade, and this goes, I would say, this in a way trying to make this way of thinking that for the generation you have just said, Vučićević, to say Branko Vučićević is probably the intellectual part of the Yugoslav cinema in a very interesting and queer way, I would say, queer in a sense of forging networks or making up networks that usually would be deemed impossible or improbable. That Vučićević was such a figure connecting so much of the Yugoslav cinema, be it on screen or off screen. Then someone like Tomislav Gotovac, who I just will take up the small poster that we have published on occasion of screening of Gotovac's film on the Anthology Film Archive, so I also make a bit of fun of it. So for the audience, they will see a poster, Tom Gotovac as the Superman. Gotovac, who in a way expanded the cinematic way of living onto the streets with his performances, and who in a way directly has cut with his interventions, performances, but as a way of thinking that he has cut into the fabric of social reality of Yugoslavia. And that if you expand upon it, yeah, Želimir would be in a way, some sense with his own approach, that he even has outdone all of his colleagues and friends and peers. In a way that, I mean, from the earliest short films, that everything was somehow about intervening a very specific way into the social and the political fabric of his own environment, of back then of Yugoslavia, and then of course from the 1990s on Serbia, or what we call today region, or the ex-Yugoslav countries. So I would say that this imperative of very interesting formal experiments and the confidence that experimenting on a formal side, nevertheless, even if you're employing sometimes rather avant-gardist or experimentalist methods, that those experiments on the formal side at some point will reverse and become interventions into a context, political or social, by its own right. So this confidence that this, in a way, going out of a box of different departments, that this is something so characteristic about much of the interesting cinema produced in socialist times of Yugoslavia.
Back a little bit to the books as an object. Introduction to the Problem is not perhaps the most innovative of the books presented here, but it also shows an attempt to think about the book by other means, not only cinema as itself. I mean, certainly the text itself can be dadaistic, Zenitist, postmodern, whatever. It doesn't have to confine to this linear narrative form anymore. On the other hand, there is a long tradition of artist books, of different kind of playing with the medium. What do you think might be the next after, let's say, Past, but also some books of Pavle Levi, who you mentioned, which are more in a way of expanding the medium of the book into cinema and all other means?
Yeah, maybe, I mean, it's interesting to say that the Žilnik Buden book, from the moment it was published in Serbo-Croatian a decade ago, the book had been well received in a sense. It was well read, it was widely read. I mean, it was available as almost already as a PDF. It was available online, and also for the book launches in those different cities. I mean, there were amazingly well-attended events. Telling this because also the issue with this book we're talking now about is, I mean, yeah, we have kind of two wunderkinds of Yugoslav and post-Yugoslav culture talking al pari, I mean, on equal footing. And this gives a book, and also how it was produced in the first place, as a hybrid of essays and a conversational style, and the conversations, that this already made the initial, the first run of, let's say, the Serbo-Croatian version of the book made interesting. Again, a hybrid form, and then a second, two conveners, I mean, two people, two intellectuals, two important intellectuals onto whom so much is projected, but always both Žilnik and Buden are deemed quite important, also maybe decisively important, as a kind of orientation in the times we live. So I mean, this made already the initial book, Uvod u prošlost, Introduction to the Past, made so interesting and so well received. The question of how to expand the international edition, I would say, made it interesting, and I mean, we needed all the three co-publishers. I mean, and then especially our colleagues in Novi Sad from Kuda and us, thinking of how to make it not just available in another language, but also to make all those subtleties, ironies, sarcasms that are in a way stored in the one language that Želimir and Boris have talked, and this was Serbo-Croatian, that all this which is sediments of, that are maybe some of them are just for the cognizance of Yugoslavia, even for now the later generations, for much of them this is like a place to say, this is like old ages. I mean, much of those informations are almost irrelevant even to the younger Yugoslavs. So the question was in a way how to, not just to deconstruct the format, but also in a way how to make much of the information that in a way otherwise would be very hard to get or hard to research, would maybe ask too much of an international reader, of how to make it available. And I would say that the idea of combining on a book, on a paper, like what we have published, yes, so it's just 2 months ago, with the QR codes linking all those references to PDFs on the Memory of the World website, in a way making it almost maybe sometimes even too easily accessible, all those references, and again, making it somehow survivable. I mean, that the reader, once he or she, they get the book, that they are not already in the start afraid that they won't get some of the, again, the subtle and the important details. I mean, this would go for one part of what it meant to expand a text from the initial to the second, I mean, international edition. Then, I mean, I would say, I mean, what was also important, and this was something that even for the authors, I mean, once we have approached them already a decade ago, and with the intention to publish international edition, both of them, Boris and Želimir, they were a bit afraid that even some 5-6 years ago, that already from the time that they had recorded their own conversation, from the moment we have asked them to do international edition, that so much has changed within the political climate in the world we live in, that they would have to rewrite it. And I mean, this then would go on probably like a catch-22, like, yes, we would probably always would have needed another rewriting, which would take then another time, and then again and again and again. So I would say what in the meantime has changed is that this is something, I mean, I would claim that has become one of the dominant formats of today's publishing are the conversation pieces. Like, I will just also show a piece. This is a book. It's Pier Paolo Pasolini, 1969. His Conversations in New York, and I mean, okay, this book, I mean, this conversation comes from 1969, but it was not published until the early 2000s in Italian and then later on in English and other languages. Telling, I mean, of how much this kind of books that are produced as document of a conversation, of a live conversation, that this has become quite important genre, if you talk about books. And that this conversation of Boris's and Želimir's 10 years ago, now in a way fits amazingly into this new terrain, where it is almost like a projection or idea or clue that conversations are maybe kind of a principal way to maybe, or even there something, sometimes the most opportune way, the royal way of how to approach some person, rather than maybe bigger monographs or other genres of academic writing. And this all together in a way made it this confluence of thinking of how to translate a book from, not just from one language, but from one context to another. And this genre change, that conversation pieces have become so important. You know, I mean, yeah, I would say that this made this book publication, even if for us as the publishers, I guess we would probably have wanted to be the book out already 5-6 years ago, but that the publication now in 2024 is timely, very timely.
I remember all the discussion we had about what you said, understanding of what they're talking about, because I mean, they are kind of old and we are all kind of old, and the younger generation have no idea what certain phrases or syntagms or terms are meaning. And this idea with referencing it via QR into well-respected and well documented sources is very interesting and kind of innovative idea for the book publishers. Do you think that younger generations, let's say 30 or younger, will have a really problem with understanding what two of them are talking about, even with references?
Yeah. Online and offline, yes. Yeah, I would say, I mean, the question of understanding their comprehension or getting the nuances, I mean, it's still there. It will be always there. And it is not, I would say, this is not a question of to flatten Boris and Želimir. I mean, this would have been in a way the easy way out of just referencing in a very old style form by footnotes, by references on paper. I mean, this would be, again, it would have been an easy way out. But then I would also say that something, what is important about the attitude, and this was also our prime question, if making this international edition of a book that had, I mean, that encountered two important Yugoslav intellectuals, the question of not make it exotic, I mean, not that, or what I already have said earlier, that this book, in a way, though it is introduction, so it promises some kind of essential kind of primer, or call it ABC. So it promises some kind of privileged access to some knowledge of a country, of a historical period, of artistic or cultural production. So it promises, so already in the title we have this promise that this is a kind of a privileged access. But what, in a way, but already then in the form how the book was initially produced as Uvod u prošlost, that the question was already by two authors, and of course, I mean, they're more by Buden in his essays, introduction had been, question was also how much history, what we call history, in a very, I would say, Benjaminian sense, of how much history shapes knowledge. And that this figure of introduction to something, or this privileged path to something, has been always warped by history, by historical events, be them emancipatory or catastrophic ones. So anyway, I would say that this, maybe the sense, what would be so important about this book is that first, yes, I mean, it gives you a pretense, it empowers you in a way that you observe two important figures talking about important issues. But then also on the, again, as a kind of a trance or meta level, they both undo this pretension as not to become monumentalist or megalomaniac. So anyway, I guess, so this is and for us, I would say, not just for us as the publishers and being a part of a collective here in Zagreb or in Novi Sad or in US, I mean, what is so important, I mean, that, and there I would say, I mean, this is a question of sometimes of a happenstance, is that, I mean, you don't get too many times important figures like them to come together. Like that Boris and Želimir have come together. This is, I mean, this does not happen too often. And so in a sense, yeah, I mean, I guess that we have secured, we have saved this, still this maybe that once the book was out in Sub Creation, people felt it that way immediately. And what I would say, I think that we have somehow saved this moment, this moment of wonder. I would say miracle, but wonder in a sense that this encounter had happened, and that both its energies, passions, had been preserved, but also the moment kind of, not of sacrilege, but of the iconoclasm. That all of these three moments are also in the book. Yeah, we are talking about now, yeah, took as a reference point. Yeah.
How do you think that this book in particular fit into other, let's say, with cinematic, but also some other philosophical and theoretical books we are publishing through the years? You mentioned already this idea of interview and Pasolini's interview. We also were co-publisher of Godard-Diras Dialogues, which is perhaps even more closer to the idea what Boris and Želimir did. But also there are other books on the table. And how do you think it fits into, or not, into this vision we do not have exactly?
You know, I mean, maybe now for us, so now taking the opportunity in a way also to close now our podcast for today with this thought, I would say that what is so interesting also that now, and a fact in a way, that has happened or occurred also just within the last decade. Parallel to the to Buden Žilnik endeavor, is that if we are thinking about so many other authors, be they experimentalists in cinema, be they documentarian or feature film directors, be they female ones, queer ones, so-called third world ones, and now we could go on with the enumeration and a list of people, authors marginalized, that there is something like we could see that there was immense work done in the last decade of construing not just an alternative history of cinema, but actually opening up a multitude of history of cinema. And I would say that this is also partly the wager that both Boris and Želimir had in mind, that cinema is not just a fact that happens within a historical time, but that cinema as a medium and also as a collective effort is actually being the medium. Also, this was the wager of the 20th century, that cinema is opening up of historical times and historical temporality. And so that this, with this pretension, that cinema is something extra cinematic, is something historical, that there is an amazing amount of work that has been done, promoted in the last decade on so many important figures. I mean, just to say that, for example, if we would think of someone like Chantal Akerman, once in 2013, that Chantal Akerman had been kind of named the new number one within the canon of films. Of how much this had changed already much of the focus we are thinking about a very singular history, and this is a history of cinema. But again, taking this event, and there are so many others, exhibitions, so many retrospectives and so on, that what is so interesting also about the introduction to the problem by Želimir and Boris, that there is a wager, again, there is a sense that cinema, at least for a period, important period within the 20th century, was a possibility to open up and to emancipate history. So I would maybe also just now getting to one of the most important books we have published, Jacques Rancière's Modern Times. In a way, this is what Rancière is talking about. And I would say that Boris's and Želimir's book really fits into that narrative. So that it is not maybe just, as to say, like the famous proverb by Jean-Luc Godard, it is not so much about doing things, doing films, political films, but doing films politically. So if you're talking about the politicality of cinema and also of publishing, again, I would say that the politicality of it would consist in a sense that this is in maybe a privileged way within a broader context of a visual culture that we are today living in, what Debord has called the society of spectacle, where the image in a way has become the primary source of a society and a material, that it is taking up cinema as a tool to open up history.
Okay, I believe that's the time we had. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this nice discussion, and I hope people will like it interesting and perhaps even engage in some way on comment section.
Yeah, thank you.